Okay, hello everybody. My name's Nikki Walters. I'm really pleased to be at this conference today. I work as a visiting lecturer at Marjons, and my workshop is all about the brain and movement and how those two things are interconnected. So, hello everybody. I know lots of people. Lovely, thank you, smiley people. My name's Nikki Walters. You might have remembered me from when I worked at Plymouth City Council for 17 years, I think it was. Then the pandemic happened, didn't it? And then I decided I was going to retire, but no, Marjons said, could you come and work for us part-time? So at the moment, I'm representing Marjons. I'm a part-time visiting lecturer, they call them at Marjons. So then Marjons has the connection with the Early Years Hub, and so I was asked to do a workshop. So welcome, everybody. Today, I'm thinking about moving and learning and moving and the connections between the both. I must apologise, this is the 6th time I've done this workshop, so I might miss something and go back to it if you don't mind. My head's like... So, the importance of movement and the interconnection with every movement that a child and an adult makes has an effect in your nervous system, in your brain, in your nerves, throughout your body. That's the premises we're thinking about. And what I want you to, one of the takeaways I want you to think about from this workshop is, when I watch a child move when I get back, every movement can tell me something about how their brain's working. We are not neuroscientists, we haven't got all the machinery to look in the brain, but every movement a child's making, you can tell what's going on in their brain, which is quite scary, isn't it? You know, when you go out into town, I wonder what you say. What do you do, madam? Oh, I'm an early years practitioner. I say, no, I help grow brains. Anyway, so, here we go. So, learning to move, moving to learn. After I put this title together, I then Googled it, and there's lots of people who do websites, books, blogs with the same title, moving to learn and to move. So, thinking about body movements and the effects on the brain development and the effects on body movements. Sorry, I'm moving a lot back. So, where do we start? We know lots about movement development, don't we? We know young babies. Who works with the really young babies? Yeah, we know they develop their torso first, then their head. Yeah. We know typical development. Is that even a thing? Large motor skills then, and then the fine. A thought for today: how old are the children you work with? And how old were they when we were locked down? Do you remember that time we were locked down, only out for an hour? Were they even alive then, depending on the age group you do? Or some of them. If they were, one of Phil's slides this morning, he showed those sensitive periods of development. Which period of time were we locked down for that particular child, and have they missed anything important for those sensitive periods of development, including movement? How many children have you noticed might not be as confident with movements? Have you seen any child that when they're really tired, their head lags? We know that's the first thing for baby development, torso and head, but has it been developed enough that when they're tired they collapse completely, like lots of children, or is it the head that goes first? Just an interesting thought. How old were your children when we were locked down, where gross motor skills might not have been practiced as much as maybe they should have been? Nothing we could do about it, but it's just being aware of, and is there any games we can play to strengthen those muscles, strengthen those tendons? You know, we can't go backwards, but we can think about it, what we can do now. Our Bible, everybody got this on their bedside table, the EYFS? We know it's the law, it's the must, isn't it? It's the must. We must plan activities that says that are in the EYFS, and physical development is one of those. When's the last time you looked at that in quite depth? 2 days ago. Lots of people plan beautiful things, don't they, on their timetable. We're getting the bikes out now, we're doing dance now, we're going to the park now. But how many of you have spoken to yourselves, if you're childminders or childminder friends, or colleagues that you work with, about, Are we really concentrating on core strength at the moment? Do we need to concentrate on balance or coordination or agility? Or do we just generally say, here's a nice physical activity? I recommend you don't write it down in that detail you're planning, but your thoughts should be that detailed. Yeah. And if we're thinking the link brain development and physical, repeated opportunities. People know a little bit about brain development. We do something once. When it's repeated in a relaxed, calm, enjoyable session, it goes to your long-term memory. And Ofsted would say, learning only happens if it's gone to your long-term memory. Know more, remember more, and then you can use it as a skill. Shouldn't do anything because Ofsted says, but just interesting that Ofsted does think about that. Yep. Have you noticed a footnote on your eWellFest document? If you click on it and open it up, have you seen this poster before? It's in our statutory document, in the document we must have reference to. So I just thought I'd show it you. People's faces, oh no, I don't know that one. Yep. It's just interesting to, as a reflection point, on the timings, how often, how long are the children in your care physically active?
You never sit still.
I thought that. The under threes, 30 minutes across the day, that's quite appropriate, isn't it? We do a bit of rolling here, we do a bit of tummy play here, we have a nice relaxed time here. Then you jump to the 0s to 5s, 180 minutes, 3 hours in my calculation, yeah? So does that mean, if you only have 3 hours opened in your session, that your story time needs to be like this? Come on, children, we've got to give our 3 hours activity. We can't listen, you need to listen to our story like this today. No, it doesn't. It just means that we need to be talking to parents as well and promoting this as good practice. We need to promote our society, especially during lockdown, and our society generally is very still, very chair-based, car-based, yeah. And the idea is this document from the government within our document gets us thinking about how active are we helping our children to be. Neuroscience. Not a new thing. Neuroscientists have been working for quite a while. I'm not a neuroscientist myself, but I'm really passionate about learning more about it. So, history-wise, neuroscientists working, educationalists working, neuroscientists working on dead, donated brains. Yeah, finding out things, wondering about things, educationalists going along like we do, helping children. Then technology exploded, and the brain scientists, the neuroscientists, had so many more pieces of equipment to see what's happening in the brain on live brains. Just imagine how their research suddenly went, wow. And then something else remarkable happened. The neuroscientists decided to talk to the educationalists. So what we knew, actually it's got some science behind it now. We do that because our gut tells us it's right, don't we, as good early as practitioners? But the scientists agree with us now. You do that because actually in the brain it does that. So exciting. So exciting. So we know, don't we, fundamentally, when children grow, the whole body grows, including their head and including their brain. So very basic, our brain grows as we grow. But actually the minutiae lie within the brain is the exciting bit that the neuroscientists tell us about. Seen this photo before? Lots of courses when we talk about neglect and trauma, and yeah, quite familiar photo. Really basic neuroscience suggests we need to consider the 3 things over on this side of the slide. As humans, we are ready to learn. The physiology, the makeup of the brain is ready to learn. And as human adults, we have the ability to teach. Our brain makeup gives us the ability to teach. And the crucial bit is, as humans, we're capable of adapting. We can learn something, find out that's not appropriate or wrong, and learn something else that's more appropriate. How does that relate to early years? You've heard the words, the brain's plasticity before, have you, on different courses? Our brain's flexible, Yeah. So in early years, that's really important to think about. A child learns a particular way of doing things. We as early years practitioners, you see where I'm going, don't you? I think you're ahead of me. Early years practitioners don't think that's quite appropriate. So the brain has the capacity to learn something different if the children are given the right environment to do so. Health visitors that I work with call that quite a dramatic sentence. They say within the brain, the cells and the connections between the cells that are being made, this cell is giving me a behaviour, biting. I'm going to bite, but I'm going to bite my friend's leg. And the connection is made. It's quite exciting to bite my friend's leg. So not very appropriate behaviour, is it? But the health visitor would say our brain is so flexible, we can rupture and repair that connection to go to a more appropriate connection. I'm going to bite my yummy sandwich. See where I'm going? So if you do it enough times, if you do appropriate behaviour or an accepted behaviour or a socially accepted behaviour enough times, repeated enough times, you rupture one connection in the brain and you make a more appropriate connection. So well, let's have a little think about baby brain then. We're thinking about the really young children, aren't we? Babies' brains. Lots to read on there, sorry. They are physically smaller than our brains. Parts of the brain are ready and going and in action, but not all parts of the brain. Some movement behaviours, I've concentrated on movement here. Some movement behaviours are already there. They don't have to be learnt. They're there, they're the survival movements that are needed. Visual movement. How many of you plan for visual movement? I bet you've planned for fine motor skills, gross motor skills, bit of dancing. But how about your visual focus movements? Anybody ever thought of that? Baby is born with the visual circuits ready to search out a face for survival. That face is going to give me food. That face will change my nappy. That face will cuddle me, yeah? That's inbuilt. And then the gaze extends to that distance, so you can still see the face. Yeah. But then they're finding now, lots of opticians, that muscle movement here has stuck to screen level or TV level. You've all gone, oh! Yeah. So when we do lovely things like take them to the garden, take them to the park and go, oh, look at that plane. Their movement in their eye focus, it can't look at the plane. So you might as well be saying, blah, 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 blah. And because they professionally love you, they go, and unless we stop and think, how is their movement to their eyes? Can they actually see that? Or play the games with, can you see me now? Can you see me now? Can you still see me now? You're not exercising that to make the connections appropriate for eye gaze as well. Yep. You knew about the really young babies? That there are some movements that a baby can do that they think might have been an evolutionary thing. You know, a lot of mammals are born and they're ready to walk on the first day. So a very young baby, they've done this in maternity units, if you hold the baby gently under the arms and put their feet on a flat surface, they can actually walk. Not a thoughtful movement, but a brainstem movement that's a reflex. But that connection, you know, the rupture and prayer thing, ruptures and then it needs to be made again when they're crawling, commanded crawling and then walking. But they think, they don't know, there's loads more questions than answers in neuroscience. They think that might have been like a really old, you know, when we were a mammal that you had to run in case there was any danger when you were first born. How do they know? Will we ever know if that's true or not? I don't know. So, when I said they're born ready, this is trying to illustrate that, so bear with me. So, these little columns go in age. A baby is born ready with these cells. Not many more cells are made, but lots more connections are made. Can you see that? Does that diagram illustrate that quite well? So in the first, you often see these diagrams if you Google them, right up to 7 years old. And it does change. So this is 0 to 3s. And then there's like an optimum of busyness. It's a really scientific word, isn't it? There's an optimum of busyness. And that's when something equally as important as making the connections happens. That's when appropriate pruning happens. So appropriate connections, the really strong and really effective, will stay, and a special coating will be put on those connections. It's a fatty something called myelin sheath, if you need to know that bit. Yeah, on those. But the others will wither away, and that's really important for a healthy brain. You need lots of connections, but you need the appropriate connections. And there's just a piece of research now, but it's not said as fact yet, but is that, can scientists find a link between appropriate pruning and maybe children who don't have that appropriate pruning, and is that where some children have a need because they've missed that section of which bits are being pruned properly? The suggestion is, it's only a suggestion right now, the suggestion is that the neuroscience are trying to see if there's any pattern in ADHD children about how the pruning happened. Because I don't know if you know any ADHD children, or you've worked with any, but some of them who are articulate talk to us about how busy their brain feels, or how lots of different stimuli coming in. It doesn't seem to be effective in one, but it's very personal, isn't it? Because some people are, it's me. I don't want anybody to look into me and, you know, this is me, so it doesn't matter what my brain looks like, does it? Yes. So yes, so at a particular point, some are pruned off for healthy brain development. Thought about babies? Now think about a bit older children. Lots happening in their brain. Transforms every minute of every day. Billions of connections being made. Works 10 times harder than ours. No wonder little children need a nap during the day, if that's what's happening in their head. Yeah. I love that first sentence. The most complex structure in the known universe. Is that just to make sure if anybody's a Doctor Who fan or a Star Trek fan, go, actually, the Oods have got a much more complex brain than us. Anybody Doctor Who? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, don't know why she needed to go, yeah, in the known universe. Yeah. So here's an interesting picture that I found when I was researching this workshop. We were thinking about movement and the connection with brains, weren't we? So here is a picture of a still child and a child who's exercising and what's happening in their brain. So for people who are doubters, who say, oh yes, there is an importance with movement and the brain, but it's just about getting more blood there. The scientists are saying it's much more than just getting the blood there. Getting those, you know, getting us ready for action. Yeah. Interesting fact, you've been sitting for about 20 minutes. Apparently, a lot of your blood is now pooled into your hips. So as a good, yeah. So as a good teacher, I should be saying to you, right, wiggle about a bit, otherwise your brain won't be in your thinking brain, and what I'm saying will go whoosh. So that's why lots of schools used to do the wake up, shake up. Anybody remember that? Yeah? Or lots of schools used to do brain gym. Let's get a little active before we do our lesson. Because scientists were saying at certain points in time, your brain hasn't got the blood it definitely needs, so you need to wake it up. Yep. And that's when older people like me, you know, when you get up, you need to go, ooh, hang on a minute. Right, let's get everything right in the right place before we move off. Okay, brain chemistry. Anybody chemists here? Apparently that is the formation for dopamine. Anyway, brain chemistry. Movement helps release the chemicals that make us feel happy. Did we know that before the scientists proved that? Did we know if we go out dancing, if we go out on a jog, whatever your preferred movement is, it makes us feel happy? Lots of people say that, don't they? I need to go out for a run to clear my head. You hear that a lot, don't you? Yeah. Also, exercise helps our brain get rid of those chemicals that are not good for us. Yeah, those chemicals will help make us feel stressed, make us feel anxious. Movement will regulate the levels of the chemicals. How does that affect us with the little children? If we know that, if scientists have proved that, those children that are crying, those children are really sad, or those children that are too late, you know, that's land in tears because they're so active, you know those ones? Yes, so when is it appropriate to be really active? When is it appropriate to have those calm times? Is that something you do, or is it something you need to persuade your team, or is it something you're conscious about? Because the chemicals are changing within the children's brains. Seen the diagram similar to this? Yeah. Very young babies, this bit is working well. All those reflex actions, all those actions you don't need to think about. Hopefully, none of you are consciously thinking, pump my blood in my heart, send it out of the heart, pump my blood in the heart, send it. It's still a movement that our body is important to our body, but it's happening in your brainstem. Those controlled movements are happening there. We don't need to think about those. But we do need children to have experiences in the world and appropriate movements to help them have more connections to the next layer of your brain, the emotional bit of your brain. This is where movement, play, and self-regulation and PSED interact. Because if we help children move and make these connections in the brain, then it helps them work within their emotional brain and understand emotions and be able to think about emotions and control emotions and self-regulate, which is hugely important and something I have seen after the pandemic. They're not always as controlled as. And then the thinking brain, the big cortex at the top, often called your thinking brain. Hopefully you're all in your thinking brain. Oh yes, I'm thinking about all the things Nikki's saying. I'm thinking about, oh, she looks a bit hot, because she is. I'm thinking about, oh, this is the 6th workshop. I'm going to have fish and chips for my tea. Whatever you're thinking about, this is happening in your cortex. Young children, their brains aren't as sophisticated as ours, and quite often they're not working seamlessly like us. Oh yes, bit of emotion, bit of a self-regulation, bit of a thinking. We can work quite, up and down into our brain. Lots of children are still working in a particular part of their brain and they can't transfer very quickly. For example, I usually do with sand example, but I've got these now. So children are playing whatever movement activity you're doing, and their brain stem's working, because that's where movement and control and muscle memories all goes on in your brain stem. And they're doing all this, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, enjoying the music, da-da-da-da, smack. They accidentally smack their friend, yeah? We come in as early as practitioners, really good early as practitioners. Oh dear, what's happened here? Because the other one's going, ah! Oh dear, what's happened here? Oh, you've hurt your friend. What do you think about that? That's no. For some children, they're here, and their connections to their thinking brain weren't even engaged, so they don't even know what you're on about. They were just happily practicing a muscle skill and enjoying practicing a muscle skill because their brain's saying, we need some more connections made between all the parts of my brain. Yes, what are you on about? They don't get it. They can't move as sophisticated as we do. Think, listen, process, understand the question, process, think of an answer, process, get it out of my mouth. And they go, huh? Do you have a lot of that? Some of that? Yep. So this is what I was explaining. The lower part of your brain. All about movement, muscle control, muscle memory. Brain stem, all those reflex movements that we need. But then the red bit, the senses. All our senses are the keys to unlocking learning. The best way for children and adults to learn is through your senses. So, how do you include smell, sight, sound, and movement into your day? When I said senses, hopefully you all knew the first 5. Yeah? Are the other 2 familiar to some people? Yeah, people are nodding. So, sight, hearing, smell, touch, taste. When do you do that in your settings? When do you introduce children to that? When do they have the opportunities to explore those? But we're thinking about movement today. So 2 of the other senses that are really important. Your vestibular sense. That happens a lot in your ears with all the little hairs in your ears and the liquid and the balance and things. Young children need a lot of practice with their vestibular sense. That's why lots of children ask for whizzes. Do you ever get those children that really love you? Because their brain is trying to work out their vestibular sense. And you need that for balance and posture. Balance, so then you can concentrate on doing something else with your arms. You know, vestibular sense is something I don't know if all settings really consider. When are we helping children balance? When are we conscious of giving them some equipment that will help them experience their balancing sense? I'm pretending there's a plank here, by the way. What is she doing now? Yeah. And the other one, proprioceptor sense, very, very simply, where we end and the world begins. Little babies, they grab and then they re-grab, don't they? Because they haven't quite got that yet. Ooh, yeah. Teenagers go through a phase when their proprioceptor sense goes a bit, because they get all gangly, don't they? And they, ooh, I used to be there and now I'm there, yeah. But when do we think about that? Hopefully, if you have hoops and tunnels and when they're going into things, and you know, some children you need to put your hand there so they don't bang their head. And that's where we as practitioners need to talk about, oh, mind your head just a little bit lower, and everything we say like that gently will help them develop their proprioceptor sense. Yeah. Yeah, we've got it as adults, haven't we? How many people drove here today? So, you didn't drive like this, looking at where your foot was and your pedal was, did you? I didn't hear many. She can walk home. I didn't hear many crashes in the car, so I assume most people have got their proprioceptor sense right. You don't need to... She's embarrassed, you know. You don't need to see, often as adults, we don't need to see parts of our body to be able to grab things. But a lot of practitioners know that now. So the next stage is thinking about pressure. Do you know little children that try and be with their friends and they grab their friends or try and hug their friends, but they push them over by mistake? Because proprioceptor is also about pressure. How much pressure is needed to just give your friend a little tap rather than a whack and fall over? You know, how much pressure is needed to hold that delicate toy rather than crush it? You know, well, that's why Play-Doh is so brilliant, isn't it? Yeah. Everybody do Play-Doh disco? Get your Play-Doh in both hands to do the pressure, and you do. I like to squeeze it, squeeze it. I like to squeeze it, squeeze it. I like to squeeze it, squeeze it, squeeze it. And then they get bored of that, so then you go, I like to slap it, slap it. I like to slap. Anyway, so whatever toys you... Whatever toys you use, but think about pressure, yeah? I gotta go. And thinking about, we know, don't we, the importance of writing. So can you imagine how that would help all the skills you need for writing? Yep. Play-Doh disco. It's a real thing on YouTube. Lots of people do it. Not just me. Go mad.
I'm thinking, how do I get the same message across to the...
Show them the video.
You have to do the actions, Laura.
I like to move it, move it. Okay, up and down, forward and back, side to side, really important. The corpus callosum, the brain highway, whatever you want to call it, we need connections going there because, here's the fancy language, I'll try and do it simple, because young babies and younger children whose brain isn't as mature yet, they can cope with same movement both sides. Little baby, you accidentally startle them when you go to the cot. Woohoo! They go, don't they? Yeah. And some of the very little ones, I can't do it, so I'll fall over, but legs as well. Woohoo! Same actions with all their limbs all at once. Yep. So you can imagine, if you've got that, you can clap. You can tap. You can, yeah, for whatever song you're doing. Yeah. Don't know what songs you do in your setting. Yep. Then the next stage, when they're developing this brain bilateral coordination, is similar thing, both hands. Up a ladder. Yeah. Clapping like this with your friend. Very similar things. That's when walking comes in. So jumping or walking. Yeah. Yep. So you're thinking of children. Oh, I know children that find this really easy, but they find that quite hard. Have you ever seen somebody on a climbing frame try and do that? They try and grab and then jump up the next one. Grab and jump. Or on stairs. 1 foot, 1 foot. 1 foot, 1 foot. That means this bilateral coordination is not quite there yet. Then the next one is doing something completely different with this hand than this hand. For example, can I borrow you? For example, hold your glass, or glass if you have glasses in your setting, and then pour. Two different things are happening. And we get frustrated with people who spill, don't we? They poured last week. Why aren't they pouring this week? Because when your brain is still developing, when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you're cross, you're not in the thinking brain bit, this bit, the corpus callosum. So those skills might go back to the easiest skill. So to wake your brain up for all those connections, you need to move in those directions to help the blood go in the right place, help the connections go in the right place. So a little tip that I did the other day just to test this out in the nursery. Nursery children spilling one day, oh dear, never mind. How about waking their brain up just before they do their snack time? So everybody has to wash their hands before they go to snack time. So you do a little bit. You know, you have to cross your body to help this brain interact. So you do, put your right hand in and give it a wash. Put your left hand in and give it a wash. Rub it together and make them clean. Get the towel and then get the... So whatever you do to cross the sides of the brain, give them practice at that. And then hopefully the brain's awake and be able to do two different things with both hands and be able to get and pour. So please try it out and tell me if it works or not. Yep, it's thinking about how do we wake up the brain.
So what age are children when they become efficient at that?
Depends on the... Yes.
With the child who's
Atypical. Yeah, they should be developing that quite sophisticatedly at 3. Watch them on the stairs. That's why in the document it says about stair climbing. Really, they're saying, in that one sentence, they're saying, the neuroscientists say about lateral coordination, but we're observing stair climbing. See what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. But it depends on the experiences those children have had. Because how many of your children have stairs? How many live in a bungalow? How many? Yeah. Yeah. So, a practical example. Who's got balance bikes in their setting? Yeah. So fantastic to illustrate what my point I'm making, okay? So, you're doing an observation. You've given yourself the luxury of time to do your observation. I know the reality. And you've got a balance bike. Which children have got enough muscle control, tendon control, and body confidence to sit on the balance bike? That's the first stage. Then, if we know 2 hands at the same time, which children then grab the handlebars? Yeah? But which children grab and then grab, because that's the next stage, or which children grab, sit for you and can steer? That's the next stage. Can you see how the stages of the brain development go? And how you can see this child is doing this. I can see how their brain's working. But it's not just as simple as just your hands, what their feet doing as well. So grab. Which children scud with both feet to make the balance bike go? Yeah? But think they've got to do that and their feet, so that's quite brain up and down. Then which children can walk the bike? And then which children are confident if you give a little push to lift their feet off and steer, and they're so confident with their balance. Can you see how the bike can illustrate all those things with the brain? Yeah? There's lots of other toys you can illustrate it with, but I thought balance bike was easy. So, practicalities. In the UFS it says tummy play. Tummy play is so important. And did you know it came from the campaign from the American paediatricians who were investigating SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome? Babies that can't move themselves yet. It's best to put them on their backs to sleep. You know that bit, don't you? But their campaign was backs to sleep, tummies to play, so they had the experience of both muscles being used equally. People forget the second bit of that campaign. So, tummy play is so important. If you Google the magic of tummy play, there's lots of posters that come up. But it's not just important for real babies, it's important for other children as well, to get all this control and muscle. We think about movement, but do we think about stretching and extending? And do we think about just running, or do we think about all the muscles needed in your tummy? And there are links suggesting, not guaranteeing, there are links suggesting that if children have digestive problems, bedwetting problems, those kind of things, that tummy play will help strengthen those muscles. You can see the logic, can't you? See the logic. So just a slide for you to consider what equipment you have with your children to promote gross motor skills.
I don't know what the research was, but I was reading something online the other day, and they were on about children in the reception classes actually lying on their tummies while they write rather than being upright. Somebody was asking.
Very, very common, yes. Lots of reception teachers are taking this kind of idea and translating it to think, are these things that are done in nurseries important to help children with later skills like tummy play, lying on the floor for writing? Yeah. Yeah, some people are just more comfortable like that. Yeah, more, yeah. Fine motor? But you've got lots of lovely equipment for fine motor, haven't you? Yeah, for pouring and for pinching and for grasping. Yeah. Anybody have the hair curlers? Oh, this is my activity with the hair curlers. I have a furry jumper on. I stick them all over. Then I go into the toddler room. Who's going to play with me today? And then they do lots of grabbing and, there's lots of fine motor you get from there. But, yeah, they think, yes, Nikki's here. Yeah. And then Montessori, anybody Montessori trained? A Montessori activity of actually thinking about which movements do you need to open things. Lots of boxes need very different movements to open things. Yep. Don't forget your treasure baskets and heuristic play. They're not just for the baby room and the toddler room. They're brilliant further up too. Yep. Just think of all those tiny movements you get. And remember the inter-palm movement as well. Because if children can get a little marble or something in their palm, that really helps them later on for writing because they've got full control of their hand then. Do you know which of your children can move something just in their palm without using the other hand? It's quite a quite like that. Feels quite nice actually. Yes, quite a sophisticated movement to do. But all the things you've got for your treasure basket or heuristic play, you're just to discover your heuristic play. Oh, not so. How many times, or are you allowed in your setting to have shoes and socks off? Because, see all the benefits? And basically, if we say neuroscientists are telling us that the key to learning is through our senses, how sensitive are feet? And how often do we miss that opportunity of letting children learn through their feet as well as through their hands? But then, please, 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 do ask the person who pays the insurance, because in case children tread on things or stubby toes, you don't want to be the member of staff thinking, oh, hang on a minute, got to do another accident form for stubby toes. But yeah, if you can, in a safe, how you feel confident with, it's perhaps the easiest and most cost-effective way of doing sensory play. And most children, not all, but most children love it. Yeah, you just imagine, don't you, when you're on the beach and you like tickle your toes in the sand.
I was just thinking that the first thing that you do when you get to the seaside is take off your shoes and socks, isn't it? Like,
it's just a lovely feel, isn't it? Just a lovely feel.
First thing I do when I get home is take my shoes off.
yeah.
It's a relaxing feel as well, isn't it? Yeah. But do we think about movements to help foot arches or physically strengthen ankles? I think sometimes we concentrate on your wrist and your hands because we know for writing, but how about that power in your ankles, your hips, and and the importance of music and movement. Yeah? So we know that, don't you? And hopefully lots of you have been on the music course as well. But I couldn't not do a movement thing without mentioning music. And the plea from me is, please consider the variety of music that children have in your setting. Nursery rhymes are fabulous. They've got the rhyme and the rhythm and the joy of how you talk and the joy of feeling it in your mouth because they've got lovely words, haven't they? Nursery rhymes are fabulous, but they only stimulate certain parts of the brain. Don't know why that's the brain, but anyway. So have you considered, do you already, hopefully you do you already think about different music that you introduce to the children? Do you have Cornish sea shanties? Or do you have death metal? What really stimulates? I don't know why death metal. I don't even listen to death metal. Anyway, what really stimulates your children? What will make them want to move, want to groove? You know, and what will stimulate their brain in a different way? Yeah, we could have done a whole thing on music, couldn't we? But yeah, I couldn't do a talk about movement without mentioning music and the joy of music. And getting parents on board. How do you get your parents on board? Do a lot of your parents have access to technology? So BBC Bite Size or CBeebies, wonderful resource. I don't work for them, so I'm not advertising them, but they are a wonderful resource. And the one I found that relates to this workshop is the Mood Boosters. Has anybody been on this one? Basically, it's a lot of celebrities talking about the importance of moving and dancing and music. And sometimes celebrities can get different messages out than we can't. So if you say to parents, oh, do you use CBeebies? Have you seen this new resource? And definitely when we're thinking that we can't do the 3 hours that the 1s to 5s need, can they do some of the movement at home through a nice free resource? You got that one? Thank you. Mood. Yes, I'm going to send the slides to Heidi, so she says anybody who's signed up can ask for the slides, yeah. I don't know if they're sending them or asking for them. Yeah. We'll clarify that in a minute. So, these are the books that inspired this workshop in case you want to do any more reading about it. If you think, oh, Nikki said that, I'd like to find out more. These are some of the many books I used to inspire this workshop. Do you recognise some of those names, perhaps? Yeah. There's lots of coordination with PACD, brain and movement.
I think I've seen the Active Baby Healthy Brain
Yes.
one before.
Yes.
That one stands out to me. And
Yeah.
maybe the neuroscience.
And the well balanced child, I've seen that.
Oh, I don't think I've seen that.
This lady does a lot of the self-regulation as well, yeah, which is fascinating reading because she looks real in more depth at the neuroscience than I can possibly do in 45 minutes. Yeah. Just conscious of people are writing that now. I'm going to ask you then, just before you go, I'm going to say thank you, by the way. Thank you, everybody, thank you. But I would like to ask you to think, what's one thing on this workshop that's made you go, ooh? Ooh. Could you think of one thing that's made you go, ooh?